The hospital room smelled of antiseptic, its sterile silence broken only by the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor. The man lying on the bed was frail, his body a shadow of the strength he once possessed. His breath came slow, labored, as if each inhale was a battle against time itself. The nurses whispered in hushed tones, their eyes filled with quiet sympathy. They had seen this scene before, an old man at the end of his journey clinging to the last remnants of life. But this man was different. His lips trembled not with fear of death but with longing, a longing so deep that it burned in his eyes even as his body failed him. He had only one request, one final wish before the inevitable. "Please," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Bring Max." The doctors exchanged glances. They knew who Max was. The German shepherd had been his companion for years, his shadow, his protector. And now, in the twilight of his life, it was Max he wanted to see. But fate had its own plans. Because at that very moment, miles away, something was happening to Max. Something no one could have predicted. And what happened next would leave everyone speechless. The man's name was William Hartman. Once he had been a soldier, a father, and a husband. He had lived a life of duty, discipline, and sacrifice. But now he was just a man, waiting for his last sunrise, clinging to the one thing that still mattered. His dog, Max, wasn't just a pet, he was family. William had rescued him from a shelter years ago, an abandoned pup with a scar over one eye and a spirit too wild to be tamed. At first, the dog had been a challenge, restless, aggressive, unwilling to trust, but William saw something in him, something familiar, the same fire he had once carried in his own heart during his days as a soldier. Through patience, training, and an unspoken bond, Max became more than just a companion. He became William's purpose. The two were inseparable. Every morning, they walked through the fields behind William's small country home, Max trotting beside him with an almost military precision. Every night, Max lay beside his chair, his head resting on William's feet, as if standing guard against the world. But time was relentless. It stole William's strength, dimmed his vision, made his steps unsteady. The walks became shorter. The nights became lonelier. And then came the diagnosis, cancer. The word had felt like a bullet, piercing through the illusion that life would always be the same. William fought, as he always had, but the war was unwinnable. The hospital became his new battlefield, the machines and tubes his weapons. Yet even as his body surrendered, his heart held on. To Max, to the only thing that had never left his side. Now, in this cold, sterile room, he was alone. His family had visited, of course, but there was a difference between love and presence. People loved him, but they had their own lives to live. Max, though. Max had only him, and he needed to see him one last time. But as the hospital made arrangements to bring Max, something went terribly wrong. Because that night, in the middle of a raging storm, Max disappeared. The storm raged through the countryside, wind howling like a wounded beast. Trees bent under its force, their branches snapping and tumbling across empty roads. The rain fell in relentless sheets, drenching everything in its path. It was on that cursed night that Max vanished. William's nurse, Amelia, had been the one tasked with bringing Max to the hospital. She had driven to William's house expecting to find the German shepherd waiting patiently on the porch, just as he always did. But the house was eerily quiet. The door creaked open under the weight of the storm, revealing an empty living room. The dog bed lay untouched, the water bowl still full. Max was gone. Panic surged through Amelia's veins. She knew what Max meant to William. This wasn't just a dog. This was his heart, his reason to keep fighting even when his body had long given up. If she returned to the hospital without Max, she might as well be delivering the final blow to William's spirit. She grabbed a flashlight and stepped into the storm. "Max!" she called, her voice barely carrying over the wind. "Max, come here. Boy!" Silence. Then, a noise. A rustling in the distance, past the tree line that bordered William's property. Amelia pushed forward, her shoes sinking into the mud. The wind clawed at her, cold and merciless, but she didn't stop. And then she saw them. Paw prints, deep, frantic, leading into the woods. Her heart pounded. Why had Max run? Had something scared him? Was he injured? She followed the tracks, weaving through the tangled underbrush, the storm pressing against her every step. The further she went, the more she realized something was wrong. The tracks weren't just leading into the woods, they were erratic, disoriented, as if Max had been chased. But by what? Suddenly, a growl pierced the night. Amelia froze. It was deep, guttural. Not Max. Something else. Something was out there. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers slick with rain, and dialed the first number that came to mind. "Hello?" "Lucas, it's Amelia," she gasped. "Max is gone. Something's chasing him. I think he's in trouble." Lucas Carter was William's closest neighbor, a retired police officer who had known Max since he was a pup. He didn't hesitate. "Stay where you are. I'm coming." The line went dead. Minutes later, headlights cut through the darkness as Lucas's truck skidded to a stop at the edge of the property. He jumped out, shotgun in hand, his face grim. "You said you heard something?" he asked. Amelia nodded. It wasn't Max. It sounded bigger. Lucas's jaw tightened. He had heard rumors of wild animals prowling these woods. Coyotes, even the occasional wolf. But something about this felt different. Together, they pressed deeper into the forest. The storm had softened the ground, and the tracks remained clear. They followed them through the winding trees, every step filled with a mounting sense of dread. Then, just ahead, a shadow, a flash of fur. "Max!" Amelia called. The figure bolted, not toward them, but away. And suddenly, everything made sense. Max wasn't lost. He was running from something. Lucas didn't hesitate. He raised his flashlight, scanning the darkness ahead. "We need to move now." They broke into a run, branches whipping at their faces, mud splattering their clothes. The rain had turned the forest into a treacherous maze, but there was no turning back. Then a sound stopped them cold. A yelp, sharp, pained. Max. Lucas took the lead, pushing past the trees until they reached a small clearing. And there, at the base of a fallen tree, lay Max. He was trapped. His hind leg was caught between two heavy branches, his fur matted with mud and rain. His chest heaved, his ears pinned back in fear. But it wasn't just the injury that had him frozen in place. It was the eyes watching from the darkness. Lucas raised his shotgun. Just beyond the tree line, a pair of yellow eyes glowed. Then another. And another. Coyotes. They had been hunting Max, waiting for him to weaken. And now they had him exactly where they wanted. But Max wasn't just any dog. A low growl rumbled from his throat, his body trembling but defiant. Even as pain racked his leg, he wasn't backing down. Lucas cocked his gun. Not today. The coyotes hesitated, sensing the shift. One step forward, one step back. Then a crack of thunder split the sky, and with it, Lucas fired a warning shot into the air. The explosion echoed through the trees, and just like that, the coyotes scattered. Max whimpered but didn't take his eyes off the darkness. Even in pain, even at his weakest, he was still the protector. Lucas and Amelia rushed forward. "It's okay, boy," Amelia whispered, kneeling beside him. "We're taking you home." Carefully, Lucas pried the branches apart, freeing Max's leg. The dog whimpered but didn't resist. He trusted them. Even through the pain, he knew they had come for him. Amelia wrapped her arms around him, holding him close as Lucas carried him back to the truck. As they drove back through the storm, one thought echoed in Amelia's mind. They had found Max. But what if they had been too late? What if William had already taken his last breath? She pressed harder on the gas. Because tonight wasn't just about saving Max. It was about reuniting two souls before time stole their last chance. The hospital room was silent except for the rhythmic beeping of the machines. William's breathing had grown shallow, each inhale a battle against time. His fingers trembled slightly over the thin white sheets, his strength slipping away with every passing second. The nurses moved around him carefully, their expressions somber. They had seen this before, a man at the edge of life, waiting for something, holding on by a thread, and William was waiting. For Max. His mind drifted in and out of consciousness, his memories flickering like an old film reel. The sound of Max's paws on the wooden floor, the weight of the dog's head resting against his knee, the quiet, unspoken bond they had shared all these years. But Max was gone, or so he thought. A sudden burst of voices echoed from the hallway. Footsteps, urgent, fast. The door swung open and Amelia rushed inside, her clothes soaked, her hair a mess. And behind her, a blur of wet fur and desperate energy, Max. The German shepherd limped slightly, his leg bandaged, his fur still damp from the storm. But the moment he saw William, he surged forward with what little strength he had left. A gasp escaped one of the nurses as the dog leaped onto the bed, pressing his face against William's chest, whining softly. And for the first time in days, William's fingers moved. Slowly, weakly, he lifted his hand and buried it in Max's fur. The machines beeped. His breathing changed. Max. His voice was barely above a whisper, but the relief in it was undeniable. Tears welled in Amelia's eyes. She had driven through a storm, fought through the woods, faced the threat of wild animals, all for this moment. Max nudged William's face, licking his cheek gently, his tail thumping weakly against the sheets. He wasn't going to leave. Not now, not ever. The doctors and nurses exchanged glances, astonished. Just minutes ago they had prepared for the inevitable. Now they watched as William's heartbeat steadied, his breathing deepened, and something in his eyes changed. Hope. The old man chuckled weakly, a raspy, broken sound, but real. "You took your time, boy," Max huffed as if to argue otherwise. No one in the room spoke. They didn't need to. The bond between man and dog was stronger than words, stronger than time, stronger than even death itself. William had been ready to go. But now he wasn't so sure. He had one more reason to hold on. One last fight to win. In the weeks that followed, William's condition improved. Not miraculously, not instantly, but steadily. The doctors called it unexpected. The nurses called it remarkable. But William, he called it Max. The German shepherd never left his side. When William struggled through physical therapy, Max was there. When he woke up in pain, Max was there. And when he finally returned home, stepping onto his porch with the weight of his illness still on his shoulders, Max was there, right where he had always belonged. Because love, true love, the kind that doesn't need words, the kind that never wavers, the kind that stands between life and death and refuses to let go, can heal even the deepest wounds. And Max had done just that. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who believes in the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. Because sometimes love comes with 4 legs, a wagging tail, and the power to change everything. And Max was proof of that.